The UNHS Compassion floated in the darkness of space, its white hull gleaming under the light of distant stars. Red crosses marked its sides, visible from every angle, a universal symbol of healing and help. The hospital ship was Earth's pride, a moving city of medicine built to serve all beings in this part of the galaxy. Captain Jane Harris stood on the command deck, watching the stars through the large window. Her gray uniform was clean and pressed, the blue medical patch on her shoulder catching the light. She was proud of this ship and its mission. After years of war and distrust, Earth was finally showing the galaxy a different side of humanity. "Captain, the Arcturian delegation will arrive in 6 hours," said Officer Tom, looking up from his screen. Jane nodded. "Is Dr. Reed ready for them?" "Yes, Captain. He has 3 quarantine sections prepared." Jane turned away from the window. The Arcturians were not Earth's friends. They were a proud, warrior-like people who had fought against humans in the border wars 20 years ago. But now they needed help. A strange disease was killing thousands on their homeworld, and Earth's doctors were the best in the galaxy. "Tell me about our security," Jane said, walking to the central table where a map of the ship glowed blue. Officer Tom pressed some buttons, and red dots appeared on the map. "We have 30 security officers. Not many, but we are a hospital ship. We're not supposed to need fighters." Jane frowned. "The Arcturians are proud. Coming to us for help must be hard for them. Do you think they might cause trouble?" "I hope not, but keep everyone alert." In the medical wing, Dr. Thomas Reed checked his equipment one more time. He was a tall man with kind eyes and steady hands that had saved lives across 3 star systems. Today, he needed to be perfect. The Arcturians were bringing their sickest people, and nobody knew exactly what was killing them. "Doctor, the blood scanners are ready," said Nurse Paul, a young man from Earth's colony on Mars. "And the isolation rooms are set at Arcturian body temperature." "Good," Thomas said. "What about the medicine?" Paul handed him a tablet. "We have everything you asked for." Thomas looked at the list and nodded. "Let's hope it's enough. We don't know what we're dealing with yet." In another part of the ship, Ambassador Mark Wilson met with his team. He was shorter than most of the crew, with dark hair going gray at the sides. His job was to make sure the Arcturians felt welcome, even while keeping Earth's interests safe. "Remember," he told his 5 team members, "the Arcturians value strength and directness. Don't smile too much. Don't try to be their friends. Just be honest and firm." A young woman raised her hand. "Sir, what about the message we got from Earth Intelligence?" Mark's face became serious. "That's why we're having this meeting. Intelligence thinks some Arcturian military leaders don't want this mission to succeed. They don't want to appear weak by needing human help. Do you think they would try something against a hospital ship?" asked another team member, looking worried. "No," Mark said after a moment. "Even the Arcturians follow the galactic peace rules. Attacking a clearly marked hospital ship would turn every other species against them. They're proud, not stupid." But Mark didn't feel as confident as he sounded. He had spent years studying the Arcturians, and he knew how deeply they hated showing any weakness. Coming to humans, their old enemies, for medical help was probably causing huge fights among their leaders. Meanwhile, hidden among the asteroids not far from the Compassion, another ship waited. The Arcturian battle cruiser Vengeance was dark and silent, its engines off to avoid detection. Unlike the hospital ship, it was built for one purpose: war. Commander Droll stood on his bridge, watching the distant shape of the human ship on his screen. He was tall even for an Arcturian, with gray skin and eyes that seemed to burn with inner fire. His uniform was black with gold marks showing his high rank. "Commander, the human ship is still in position," said his second-in-command. "They suspect nothing." Droll nodded. "And our timing?" "Perfect. They are expecting the medical ships from our homeworld soon. When our attack ships arrive instead, they won't know until it's too late." Droll smiled, showing sharp teeth. Good. The high command was clear. This disease makes us look weak. If humans treat it, they will use it against us in the future. Better to end this problem now. Sir, it is a hospital ship, said a younger officer quietly. The galactic rules say. The rules, Droll cut him off, were made to control the strong. Are we strong or weak, Officer Tech? The young officer straightened his back. Strong, sir. Then we will act like the strong. The human ship must be destroyed, and all evidence with it. No one will know who attacked them. Back on the Compassion, Engineer Anna Lee checked the ship's systems one last time before the Arcturian arrival. The hospital ship had little in the way of defenses. Most of its power went to running the advanced medical equipment. Its shields were designed to protect against space debris and radiation, not weapons. Anna wiped sweat from her forehead. The engine room was always hot. How does everything look, computer? All systems operating at optimal levels. The ship's eye responded. Medical Deck 3 is drawing extra power for quarantine preparations. That's fine, Anna said. Dr. Reed needs everything perfect for these patients. She finished her checks and headed for the mess hall. She wanted to get some food before things got busy with the Arcturian arrival. As she walked, she passed crew members from a dozen Earth colonies and even a few non-humans who had joined the medical mission. The Compassion was a place of healing for everyone, no matter where they came from. On the command deck, Captain Jane received a message. Captain, we're picking up approaching ships. The Arcturian medical transports? She asked. Officer Tom looked confused. I'm not sure. They're coming from the wrong direction, and they're not answering our calls. Jane felt a chill run down her spine. Show me. The screen filled with images of 5 ships moving fast toward the Compassion. They were not medical transports. They were warships. Send out the emergency message, Jane ordered, her voice steady despite her fear. Tell them we are a hospital ship protected under Galactic Rule 15, and get Ambassador Wilson up here now. As the crew rushed to follow her orders, Jane stared at the approaching ships. Why would they do this? She whispered to herself. What could they possibly gain? She didn't know that in a few hours, her question would be answered with fire and death, and that Earth's response would change the galaxy forever. Alarms blared throughout the UNHS Compassion. Red lights flashed in every corridor, turning the white walls an angry crimson. Crew members who had been preparing for a medical mission now ran to emergency stations, their faces tight with fear and in disbelief. Captain Jane Harris stood firm on the command deck, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. Broadcast our status again on all channels, she ordered. Make sure they understand we are a hospital ship. Officer Tom's fingers flew across his control panel. Broadcasting now, Captain. Still no response from the approaching vessels. Ambassador Mark Wilson burst onto the deck, his usually neat hair messy from his rush to get there. Captain, what's happening? Are those Arcturian military ships? Jane nodded grimly. 5 warships, coming in fast. They're not answering our calls. Mark's face went pale. They wouldn't dare. Even they must know the consequences of attacking the hospital ship. Get me a direct line to their fleet commander, Jane said. Maybe they'll listen to a human voice. Down in the medical wing, Dr. Thomas Reed felt the ship shudder. He grabbed a desk to stay on his feet as the floor seemed to jump beneath him. What was that? Asked Nurse Paul, steadying a tray of medical tools that almost fell. Thomas didn't answer. He rushed to the nearest communication panel and pressed the emergency button. Command deck, this is Dr. Reed. What's happening? The voice that answered was not Captain Jane's but Officer Tom's, and it was filled with tension. Dr. Reed, we have hostile ships approaching. The captain has ordered all medical staff to begin emergency protocols. Thomas felt cold inside. Emergency protocols meant one thing. They were under attack. Understood, he said, then turned to his medical team who were all staring at him. Listen carefully. We need to move all critical patients to the intersections. Start prepping the emergency escape pods for those who can be moved. As his team rushed to follow orders, Thomas took a deep breath. This wasn't supposed to happen. Nobody attacked hospital ships. It was one of the oldest rules in space. In the engineering section, Anna Lee worked frantically to reroute power to the ship's weak defensive shields. The Compassion was not built for battle. Its shields were designed to protect against space debris and radiation, not weapon fire. "We need more power to the forward shields," she shouted to her team over the wail of alarms. "Take it from the backup life support if you have to." A young engineer looked at her with wide eyes. "But regulations say." "Forget the regulations," Anna snapped. "We're under attack. If those shields fail, regulations won't matter because we'll be dead." On the Arcturian warship Vengeance, Commander Droll watched with cold satisfaction as his fleet moved into attack position. "Target their communication arrays first," he ordered. "Then their engines. I want that ship disabled before they can send a clear distress call." His weapons officer nodded. "Yes, Commander. Weapons locked on target." "Sir," said Officer Tech hesitantly, "their broadcasts confirm they are a hospital ship. The markings are clear." "If we do this," Droll cut him off with a sharp gesture. "The decision is made. High Command has spoken. The humans must not gain influence with our people through this disease. Our scanner shows they have minimal defenses. This will be quick." He turned to his weapons officer. "Fire." Back on the Compassion, Captain Jane was still trying to establish communication when the first blast hit. The ship rocked violently, throwing several crew members to the floor. Sparks showered from a damaged control panel. "Direct hit to our main communications array," shouted Officer Tom, his hands flying over his console. "We've lost long-range communications." Jane gripped the edge of the command table. "Emergency power to shields. Send a distress call on all remaining channels." Ambassador Mark steadied himself against a wall. "Captain, I need to send a message to Earth right now. We need to tell them exactly who is attacking us." Jane nodded. "Use the emergency transmitter in my office. It has its own power source." As Mark hurried away, the ship shook again, harder this time. The lights flickered and went out for a moment before emergency power kicked in. "They hit our main power core," reported Officer Tom, his face lit only by the glow of his screen now. "Shields are at 30% and falling." Jane hit the ship-wide communication button. "All crew, this is Captain Harris. Proceed to emergency escape pods. I repeat, all non-essential personnel proceed to escape pods immediately." In the medical wing, Dr. Thomas and his team worked quickly to move patients. Some could walk with help, but many were on beds that had to be rolled through the corridors. "This way," Thomas shouted, directing a group of nurses pushing beds toward the escape pod section. Quickly. Another blast rocked the ship, and a support beam crashed down just meters away from them. Thomas heard screams from somewhere deeper in the ship. "Keep moving," he ordered. "We can't help them if we don't get these patients out." Nurse Paul looked back, torn between following orders and helping those who were screaming. "Doctor, there are people trapped back there." Thomas grabbed his shoulder. "I know. But these patients can't save themselves. We have to make choices now." In the engineering section, Anna worked in near darkness as systems failed around her. The ship was dying, and she knew it. "All engineering crew to escape pods," she ordered. "There's nothing more we can do here." As her team ran for the exit, Anna stayed at her console for one more moment, trying to squeeze just a little more power to the shields protecting the escape pod bays. It might give a few more people time to get away. On the command deck, Jane received the worst news yet. "Captain," said Officer Tom, his voice shaking, "they're targeting the escape pods." Jane's blood turned to ice. "What?" "The Arcturian ships are firing on our escape pods as they launch." For the first time, Jane felt real fury mixing with her fear. "Get me any working weapons system we have," she ordered. "Anything at all." "Captain, we only have 2-point defense turrets. They're meant for clearing space debris, not fighting warships." "I don't care. Target their weapons systems and fire." In his office, Ambassador Mark finished sending his emergency message to Earth. He had included everything: the unprovoked attack, the identity of the attackers, and their targeting of escape pods. As he pressed the final button to send the message, the room around him exploded. On the Vengeance, Commander Droll watched the hospital ship breaking apart, sections of it venting atmosphere into space. He saw tiny escape pods fleeing like seeds from a bursting fruit. "Target those pods," he ordered. "No witnesses." Officer Tech stepped forward. "Commander, they are unarmed civilians and medical staff." "This is wrong." Droll turned to him slowly. "Are you refusing an order, officer?" The younger Arcturian stood straight. "Yes, Commander. I cannot be part of this." Without hesitation, Droll drew his sidearm and shot Officer Tech in the chest. As the young officer collapsed, Droll looked around the bridge. "Does anyone else wish to question orders?" The bridge crew turned back to their stations in silence. "Continue firing," Droll said calmly. "Leave nothing intact." The UNHS Compassion, once a symbol of humanity's commitment to healing, broke into pieces against the blackness of space. Its white hull, marked with red crosses, turned to floating debris. Of the 2,000 crew and patients aboard, only a handful of escape pods managed to slip away into the darkness. But Ambassador Mark's message had been sent, and on Earth, the response was already beginning. Admiral James Walker sat in the dimly lit Strategic Command Center on Earth. The large room was quiet except for the soft beeping of computers and the occasional murmur of staff. Screens covered the walls, showing the positions of Earth ships throughout the galaxy. James was a tall man with gray hair and a face that had seen too many wars. He had hoped those days were behind him. Earth had been at peace for 15 years. The hospital ships like the Compassion were supposed to be the future, healing instead of fighting. A young officer hurried across the room toward him, her face pale. "Admiral, we've received an emergency transmission from the UNHS Compassion." James straightened in his chair, put it on the main screen. The largest screen flickered, then showed Ambassador Mark Wilson's face. The image was blurry and full of static, but his fear was clear. "This is Ambassador Wilson on the UNHS Compassion. We are under attack by Arcturian military vessels. They have disabled our communications and engines. They air." The image shook violently. "Firing on our escape pods. Repeat, they are targeting unarmed escape pods. This is a deliberate attack on a clearly marked hospital ship. The attackers are confirmed as Arcturian military vessels from the 7th Fleet under Commander Droll. We need immediate." The message cut off in a burst of static. The room fell completely silent. "They attacked a hospital ship," James whispered, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. "Sir," said the communications officer, "we've lost all contact with the Compassion. Last sensor readings show." She hesitated. "Show what?" James demanded. "The ship has been destroyed, sir. Sensors detected escape pods being targeted." James stood up slowly. His face was like stone, but his eyes burned. "Get me the president. Now." In the White House, President Linda Marshall sat at the head of a long table. Around her were the 12 members of the United World Council, the highest leaders from Earth and its colonies. The room was tense with shock and anger. "The attack has been confirmed," Linda said, her voice steady despite her fury. "The UNHS Compassion has been destroyed by Arcturian military forces. They deliberately targeted a hospital ship and then hunted down the escape pods." "How many survivors?" asked the representative from Mars Colony. "Unknown. Few, if any," Linda replied. The room filled with angry murmurs. Admiral James stood up with a tablet in his hand. "Madam President, Council members, I have prepared a response plan." "Let's hear it." "Admiral," Linda said, "the plan is called Protocol Omega. It was created after the border wars as a last resort if Earth ever faced another existential threat." He looked around the table. It calls for the immediate activation of our hidden defense network. The council members exchanged surprised glances. What hidden defense network? Asked the Europa colony representative. James touched his tablet, and the wall screen lit up with images of ships and space stations that looked ordinary. Cargo vessels, mining platforms, communication relays. Then the images change, showing the same structures with hidden weapons systems and military equipment. For the past 15 years, while publicly reducing our military, we've been integrating advanced defense systems into civilian infrastructure. Every major transport ship has hidden weapons. Every space station has military-grade shields. We have stealth vessels positioned throughout human space. The room was silent as the council took this in. You've been preparing for war while we've been promoting peace, the Luna representative finally asked. Linda stood up. We've been promoting peace while preparing for those who don't want it, like the Arcturians. She walked around the table slowly. I believe in peace. I believe in healing. That's why we built the Compassion and ships like her. But I also swore to protect Earth and its people. She stopped behind James's chair. Admiral, how quickly can Protocol Omega be implemented? 24 hours, Madam President. Linda looked around the table. I am calling for a vote. The activation of Protocol Omega would be a declaration of war against the Arcturian Empire. One by one, the council members voted. For the first time in 50 years, the vote was unanimous. Protocol Omega is approved, Linda said quietly. God help the Arcturians. They'll get no mercy from us. Across the solar system, the hidden defense network came to life. On Mars, what looked like a cargo depot opened to reveal a fleet of warships. In the asteroid belt, mining platforms transformed into weapons platforms. Near Jupiter, research stations became military command centers. On the frontier military base called Hephaestus, Colonel Robert Mills received sealed orders. He was a stocky man with a hard face and steady hands. His unit, the 1st Retribution Fleet, had trained for years for this moment. He gathered his officers in the secure briefing room. The men and women who entered were the best fighters Earth had, though none had ever fought in a real war. Today, Robert began, we received word that the hospital ship Compassion was destroyed by Arcturian forces. Angry mutters filled the room. Many had friends on that ship. Protocol Omega has been activated, Robert continued, and the room went silent. For those who don't know, that means we are now at war. He pressed a button, and a hologram appeared above the table, showing the Arcturian home system. Our mission is to enter Arcturian space undetected and prepare for a coordinated strike. We will disable their defense systems, their military bases, and their fleet. Sir, said a young officer, are we talking about total war? Robert's face was grim. They attacked a hospital ship. They killed doctors, nurses, and patients. They fired on escape pods. What do you think? He looked around at his officers. Earth has been peaceful for so long that the galaxy has forgotten what we're capable of. The Arcturians think we're weak because we choose to heal rather than hurt. They're about to learn how wrong they are. At the same time, military analyst Greg Thompson sat in front of multiple screens aboard Earth's lead dreadnought, the Nemesis. The ship was massive, 5 times larger than any vessel Earth had publicly acknowledged building. Greg was younger than most of the senior staff, with quick eyes and a mind that could process vast amounts of data. For years, he had analyzed every piece of information about Arcturian defenses. Their weakness is here, he said, pointing to a spot on the holographic map. Their central command relies on 6 communication hubs. If we take those out simultaneously, their defense network will be blind for at least 10 minutes. Admiral James nodded. And their fleet? Spread thin. They don't expect an attack at home. They think their borders are their vulnerable points. What about civilian populations? Greg pulled up another map. We can target military installations with minimal civilian casualties, but it will limit our options. James studied the map. We're not them. We don't target civilians. Find a way. As ships across the solar system prepared for war, President Linda addressed the people of Earth. Billions watched as she stood at her podium, her face solemn. Today, we lost the hospital ship Compassion to an unprovoked attack by Arcturian forces. This was not just an attack on a ship. It was an attack on everything we stand for. Healing, peace, cooperation. Her voice grew stronger. Make no mistake, Earth will respond, and our response will be remembered for generations to come. In space, the human fleet gathered, weapons ready, crews determined. The message to the galaxy would be clear. They attacked a hospital ship. Earth would answer with complete obliteration. Commander Droll stood tall on the bridge of his ship as it entered Arcturian space. Around him, his crew worked quietly, some stealing glances at the officer's body that had been removed from the bridge only hours before. No one spoke about Officer Tech or his objections to attacking the hospital ship. Send a message to High Command, Droll ordered. The human vessel has been eliminated. No witnesses remain. His communications officer nodded. Yes, Commander. Shall I include the details about targeting escape pods? Droll considered this. No. Simply state the mission was a complete success. As the Vengeance and the other ships moved deeper into Arcturian territory, Droll allowed himself to feel satisfied. The humans would never know who attacked their precious hospital ship. By the time they figured it out, if they ever did, the diplomatic damage would be minimal. He had saved his people from the shame of accepting human help and removed a human presence from this sector of space. High Command would be pleased. Commander, his second-in-command said, approaching with a tablet. The victory celebration is being prepared. High Command has requested your presence as soon as we dock. Droll nodded. Good. It's about time my service was properly recognized. What Droll didn't know was that 50 stealth vessels were already moving through Arcturian space, completely undetected by Arcturian sensors. These ships had no markings, sent no signals, and left no trace of their passage. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a city. Aboard the lead stealth ship, Colonel Robert Mills studied his final orders. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes were hard as stone. All ships report ready, Colonel, said his second-in-command. Robert nodded. Begin Operation Retribution. Phase 1. Across Arcturian space, the stealth vessels moved into position. They surrounded military outposts, defense platforms, and communication centers. They did all this without firing a single shot, without alerting a single sensor. On the planet Proxima VI, the largest Arcturian military base outside their home system stood proud against a purple sky. Inside the command center, General Krav reviewed reports with satisfaction. News of the successful destruction of the human hospital ship had arrived hours ago. The humans are too soft, he told his officers. They will send angry messages and call for meetings, but they won't fight. They'd forgotten how. A young officer looked up from her console. Sir, we've lost contact with Outpost Delta. Krav frowned. Check the communication array. All systems show green, sir. They're just not responding. Before Krav could reply, another officer spoke up. Sir, the lunar monitoring station is also not responding. Krav felt a chill. One outpost could be a technical problem. 2 was something else. Put the base on alert level 2. Send scouts to both locations. But the scouts would never arrive. Outside the atmosphere, Robert's stealth ships launched their first attack. Specialized electromagnetic pulses hit the base, shutting down every electronic system. No alarms sounded. No warnings flashed. Everything simply went dark. General Krav stood in his suddenly silent command center, emergency lights casting red shadows on shocked faces. What's happening? He demanded. No one had an answer, and no one ever would. Across Arcturian space, the pattern repeated. One by one, military installations went silent. Defense platforms stopped transmitting. Monitoring stations ceased all functions. Each shutdown was precise, coordinated, and complete. On the Arcturian homeworld, Commander Droll stood before the High Command, accepting medals for his decisive action to protect Arcturian interests. The room was filled with military leaders, all congratulating themselves on their clever strategy. "The humans will never know what happened to their ship," said High Admiral Vex, the most senior Arcturian military leader. "And even if they suspect, they can prove nothing." Droll bowed his head in respect. "The mission was carried out exactly as ordered, High Admiral." "And the escape pods?" asked another commander. "No survivors." "None," Droll confirmed. "We were thorough." The celebration continued, with speeches about Arcturian strength and human weakness. None of them knew that at that very moment, Earth's response was already in motion. In orbit around the Arcturian homeworld, their pride, a ring of 50 defense platforms equipped with the most powerful weapons in their arsenal, stood guard. For generations, these platforms had protected the planet from any threat. No enemy fleet could approach without facing destruction. On Platform 1, Commander Thex supervised the night shift. It was usually the quietest time, with most of the crew resting. "Commander," called a sensor operator, "I'm picking up some strange readings." Thex walked over. "What kind of readings?" "I'm not sure. There's a shadow on the far edge of our sensor range. It's there one moment, gone the next." Thex studied the screen. "Run a diagnostic. These sensors are old." The operator nodded, but before he could start the diagnostic, the entire platform went dark. Every system shut down simultaneously. Across the defensive ring, all 50 platforms experienced the same total shutdown. In less than 60 seconds, the entire defense network protecting the Arcturian homeworld was blind and helpless. On the planet's surface, the celebration continued, unaware. Aboard the Earth dreadnought Nemesis, now visible in Arcturian space, Admiral James Walker stood on the bridge. Around him, officers worked with quiet efficiency, their faces showing no emotion despite the enormity of what they were doing. "All Arcturian defense systems neutralized," reported Greg Thompson from his station. "Their fleet is scattered. Their command structure is in chaos." James nodded. "Begin Phase 2. In high orbit above the Arcturian homeworld, hundreds of Earth warships appeared, dropping their stealth shields all at once. Their sudden appearance was like a magic trick. One moment empty space, the next a fleet of warships larger than anything the Arcturians had ever seen. In the high command chamber, alarms finally began to sound. Confused officers rushed to communication panels that no longer worked. High Admiral Vex demanded reports that no one could provide. Commander Droll stood frozen, his metal suddenly heavy on his chest. "Impossible," he whispered. "They couldn't have responded so quickly. They couldn't have penetrated our defenses." A massive view screen on the wall flickered to life, though no one had activated it. The face of Admiral James Walker filled the screen, his eyes cold. "People of Arcturus," he said, his voice echoing through not just the high command chamber, but every communication device on the planet. "I am Admiral Walker of Earth. 24 hours ago, your forces destroyed our hospital ship, the Compassion. You killed our doctors, our nurses, our patients. You fired on escape pods filled with the wounded and the healers." The room was completely silent now, every Arcturian staring at the human's face. "You attacked those who heal," James continued. "We are not them." The screen changed to show the Earth fleet in orbit. It was massive, stretching as far as the eye could see. "Your military installations have been neutralized. Your defense platforms are disabled. Your fleets are scattered and cut off. You are completely at our mercy." James's voice was calm, which somehow made his words more terrifying. "And you will find that we have none to give." The first strikes hit Arcturian military bases across the planet, precise and devastating. There was no warning, no chance to evacuate or respond. Where proud Arcturian military structures had stood, only smoking craters remained. In the high command chamber, Commander Droll watched in horror as everything he believed about human weakness crumbled before his eyes. "What have we done?" he whispered as the Earth fleet unleashed its fury on those who had dared to attack a ship of healing. The Arcturian capital city burned, not with wild, uncontrolled fire, but with precise, targeted destruction. Earth ships hung in the sky like angry gods, their weapons striking only military targets with surgical precision. Commander Droll watched from the window of the High Command building as another missile hit the military academy across the city. The building collapsed in on itself, sending up a cloud of dust. No civilian structures around it were touched. "They could destroy us all," he said quietly. "Why don't they?" High Admiral Vex stood beside him, his proud posture now bent with the weight of defeat. "Because they are making a point. They are showing us, and the galaxy, that they choose who lives and who dies." On the Nemesis, Admiral James Walker watched the same scene from orbit. Beside him, Greg Thompson monitored the operation. "All military targets hit with 97% accuracy," Greg reported. "Civilian casualties below 1%. James nodded. "Status of their fleet: disabled but not destroyed. As ordered." Earth forces had systematically powered down Arcturian warships rather than blowing them apart. Crews were left alive in ships that could no longer move or fight. They could only watch as their world's defenses crumbled. "Begin Phase 3, James ordered. Across Arcturian territory, Earth forces landed on planets and moons. They didn't come as conquering armies, but as small, precise teams with specific targets. Government buildings, military bases, weapons factories. One by one, these symbols of Arcturian power were neutralized. On the Arcturian homeworld, Colonel Robert Mills led a team directly to the High Command building. They moved through the streets with purpose, ignoring the frightened civilians who watched from windows and doorways. The guards at the entrance to High Command raised their weapons, but quickly lowered them again. There was no point in fighting. The battle was already lost. Robert and his team walked unchallenged through the grand hallways until they reached the main chamber. Inside, the highest leaders of the Arcturian military stood in silence, waiting. "By order of Earth United Government," Robert announced, his voice echoing in the large room, "the following individuals are under arrest for war crimes against humanity." He read from a tablet: High Admiral Vex, Fleet Commander Jorax, General Krav. The list continued, naming 13 high-ranking officers. When he said Commander Droll, there was a small reaction among the Arcturians. Some looked at Droll with hatred. Others looked away. "You will be transported to Earth to stand trial before the Galactic Council," Robert continued. "The charges are attacking a clearly marked hospital ship, targeting medical personnel, and firing on unarmed escape pods." Droll stepped forward. "We were following orders. I was following orders." Robert's face showed nothing. "So was I, when I destroyed your military. The difference is, my orders didn't include killing doctors and patients." 6 weeks later, President Linda Marshall stood before the Galactic Council. Representatives from 32 spacefaring species sat in a great circle, their faces solemn as Linda presented Earth's case. "We do not apologize for our response," she said firmly. "The attack on our hospital ship was not just an attack on humans. It was an attack on the very idea that there should be safe places even in war. It was an attack on healing itself." The large screen behind her showed images of the UNHS Compassion before its destruction. Medical staff of many species working together, patients being treated regardless of their origin. "We could have destroyed the entire Arcturian civilization," Linda continued. "We had the power. We had the justification. Instead, we chose precision. We removed those responsible while sparing the innocent." The council members murmured among themselves. Many had been shocked by both the Arcturian attack and Earth's overwhelming response. "The humans show surprising restraint," said the representative from the Centaurid worlds. "Or surprising power," replied the representative from Rigel. "They hid their military strength for years while pretending to focus on peace." Linda held up her hand. We did not pretend to focus on peace. We genuinely believe in peace. That's why we built hospital ships instead of warships. But we are not fools. We prepared for those who might mistake our compassion for weakness." She gestured to the screen, which now showed the Arcturian leaders in custody. "These individuals will face justice for their crimes. But Earth does not seek vengeance against all Arcturians." 3 months later, a new ship left Earth's orbital shipyard. Twice the size of the Compassion, the UNHS Remembrance gleamed white against the blackness of space, its red crosses clearly visible from every angle. 4 battle cruisers surrounded it, their weapons obvious and ready. On the observation deck, Dr. Thomas Reed stood looking out at the stars. He was one of only 12 survivors from the Compassion, pulled from a damaged escape pod by a passing trader ship. His face was thinner now, marked by what he had seen, but his eyes were still kind. Beside him stood the new captain, Jane Harris. She had been promoted to admiral after the destruction of the Compassion, but had asked to return to captain this new hospital ship instead. "It feels strange," Thomas said quietly, "going back out there after everything that happened." Jane nodded. "But necessary. We can't let fear stop us from helping others." "At least we have protection this time," Thomas said, glancing at the battle cruisers visible through the window. "Yes," Jane agreed. "The galaxy now understands that our mercy is a choice, not a weakness." The door to the observation deck opened, and a small group entered. They were Arcturians, the first delegation from their new civilian government. The old military leadership had been removed entirely, partly by Earth's attack and partly by the Arcturians themselves, who had risen up against those who brought such disaster to their worlds. The lead Arcturian stepped forward nervously. Unlike Commander Droll, who had been proud and tall, this one seemed humble. "I am Representative Kelv of the new Arcturian Council," he said. "We come seeking both medical assistance for our people and forgiveness for what was done in our name." Jane studied him for a moment. "We will treat your sick," she said finally. "But never forget, humanity extends compassion not from weakness, but from strength. We choose healing first, but we are capable of much more." Kel bowed his head. The galaxy will not forget this lesson. As the Remembrance prepared for its first mission, the story of the Compassion and Earth's response spread across the stars. Species that had dismissed humans as naive idealists reassessed their understanding. The hospital ship had revealed something that would echo through galactic relations for centuries. Earth's mercy was a choice, and woe to those who mistake it for vulnerability. In a detention center on Earth, Commander Droll sat alone in his cell. His trial was over, his punishment decided. He would spend the rest of his life in this small room, with only his thoughts for company. Every day, he remembered the moment he gave the order to fire on the hospital ship. Every night, he dreamed of escape pods exploding in silence. And always, he heard Admiral Walker's words, "You attacked those who heal. We are not them." The galaxy had learned an important lesson about humanity. They were not weak because they chose to heal. They were strong enough that they could afford to be merciful, until someone mistook that mercy for weakness. Then, as the Arcturians had discovered, Earth's answer was complete obliteration.